Hi guys, Craig here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So Ghislaine Maxwell is a name that has always been associated with some really good things. An environmentalist, a graduate from Oxford, a helicopter pilot and an EMT. Everything that is considered important and valuable in today's society. So how did she end up in jail over someone like Jeffrey Epstein? A man who is known to the world for operating an entire sex trafficking ring for 2 decades. Well, this story is more twisted than you may think. But before I go into the details, make sure you give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And hit that bell icon for notifications. So let's begin. Ghislaine Maxwell was born in France in 1961. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a renowned media tycoon, and he was one of the richest men of the 60s. He had it all: a booming business, money, a loving wife, and 9 children, Ghislaine being the youngest. So Ghislaine grew up in a 53-room mansion. She was by far her father's favourite. She had everything a child could dream of. So how did she end up from having this dream life to being Jeffrey Epstein's right-hand woman? So it all began with the mysterious death of her father on November 4th, 1991. Robert Maxwell was aboard his yacht, the Lady Ghislaine, proudly named after his favourite child. He frequented his yacht often, so nothing was out of the ordinary, or at least that's what it looked like at first. But it turns out that Robert Maxwell had defaulted on his loans, and these loans were worth £50 million. On November 5th, the last time that the Lady Ghislaine's crew saw Robert Maxwell was at 4:25 AM, and as morning came in, he was officially declared missing. It turns out Robert Maxwell had fallen overboard. His remains were found later that day floating in the Atlantic Ocean. The official cause of death was a mixture of a heart attack and accidental drowning. It was later found out that £460 million was missing from the Maxwell pension fund. This led to turmoil in Ghislaine's life. It changed everything. She went from being someone that never had to worry about a single thing to one that had lost her father and the family fortune. Her family was also in the middle of a fraud lawsuit, so Ghislaine had to get out of there fast, and she did. When you grow up having everything, it's really hard to let go of that kind of lifestyle. So Ghislaine decided that she was going to get it back one way or another. And to get her goal, she moved from Oxford to New York City. Even though Ghislaine had lost the family fortune, she still knew people in high places. She was smart. Ghislaine made knowing people into a marketable skill, and soon she caught the eye of millionaire Jeffrey Epstein. In 1996, the two began being spotted everywhere together. They were believed to be dating, and it really seemed like they were for a while. But the two had slightly different ways of viewing their relationship. Ghislaine seemed like she was all wifed up, while Jeffrey Epstein in a 2003 interview called her his best friend. He says that she's been a friend that helps him out, but clarified that she was never on his payroll. Although in the years that have followed, it has been found out that Ghislaine handled a lot of the money, and the staff even called her the lady of the house, due to her being responsible for running most of his homes. So Jeffrey Epstein wasn't really the friendliest of guys. He didn't have a lot of friends, just several acquaintances. Well, until Ghislaine came into his life. An investment banker who used to be at the parties that they hosted called Ghislaine a charmable and likeable front person. He said that it's a big part of the reason that people even spoke to Jeffrey Epstein. Ghislaine was the friendly face that everybody trusted. She was the person that brought people into the inner circle. Epstein's money entertained them, so this was a perfect arrangement. The pair hosted dinners and parties, and they seemed harmless, but they really weren't. Some of the things that Ghislaine did for Epstein included recruitment. The only thing was, they weren't being recruited to work in one of his offices. They were being recruited to be sexually abused and sex trafficked all over the world. In around 1993, Ghislaine began posting very random jobs, and she'd done this frequently. The ads would have Epstein's number as the contact, but her name at the top of the ad. They were being aimed at young women, often that came from less privileged backgrounds, and wouldn't really require any specific education. Sometimes these ads would be for positions like a yoga instructor, or anything that would entice young women into applying. Ghislaine would even add a lot of perks, like great pay, travel opportunities. I mean, this type of job posting would get people excited nowadays, so think of what it would have been like in 1993. Who wouldn't want to apply for a post like this? So this wasn't the only way that Ghislaine roped young girls in. Epstein used to claim that he also scouted for models for Victoria's Secret and other brands. Ghislaine claimed to do much of the footwork. She'd stop on the street, in parks, and anywhere that she saw young girls and women, and she would give them her number, saying that she was a model agency scout and they looked like they could have a career in the modelling industry. The women would be invited to come to Epstein's home and they would gladly show up. Once the women got there, they still wouldn't suspect a thing, because the person that they saw in front of them was this British white friendly woman. She had a friendly face and a recognisable name. She seemed to also have a lot of money at her disposal, and that's something that most young people wouldn't question. All they cared about was having an easy job and getting paid. But that's how Ghislaine trapped them, and once they were in, they couldn't leave. It's important to note here, although most of the victims are now adult women, back when they were subjected to Epstein's abuse, most of them were children, some as young as 12 years old. A woman called Courtney Wild has been one of the most prominent names in the long legal battle against Jeffrey Epstein. When she was 14 years old, she lived in a trailer park in Florida. I mean, her life was simple. There wasn't a lot of money around, nor opportunity to make much, since she was only in her early teens. One day though, another 14-year-old told her that she could tag along with her and make $200 just by massaging a man. 14-year-old at the time didn't really question this, so she went along with her. When the pair got there, they were taken into Jeffrey Epstein's bathroom, where there was a massage table laid out. They started off by massaging his back, and then when he turned over, they were instructed to take off their clothes and were both sexually assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein. And this didn't just happen to Courtney, it happened to countless others. Once Ghislaine and Epstein's other co-conspirators would bring him the girls, he would fly his new employees on a private jet to his private island. They'd land at the airport and take a boat to the island itself. The women would then be totally isolated from the rest of the world, with nowhere to go, so they would have to stay there. When they were boarding his private jet, they didn't realise that they were being sex trafficked. But as soon as they got there, things would start to get really scary, really fast. Many of the survivors reported that their passports would be taken away from them as soon as they got to the Virgin Islands. There, they would find themselves isolated while being sexually abused, not just by Jeffrey Epstein himself, but often Ghislaine and anyone that Epstein chose to share the girls with. Virginia Louise is another one of the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, but her abuse was spread out over years. Virginia has talked numerous times about how she was roped in by Ghislaine, saying that Ghislaine approached her at the resort she worked at when she was only 16 years old as a locker room attendant. She told her that she was wasting her time there, adding that she could make a lot more money if she worked as a masseuse for Jeffrey Epstein. When Virginia says that she wasn't a masseuse and didn't even know the first thing about massage, Ghislaine told her that they would pay for her schooling and get her trained and certified so that she was on the top of her game. She'd still get a salary and have the benefit of getting to travel the world. Sounds like a dream opportunity for most of us, doesn't it? Well, it did to Virginia as well, so she quickly signed up and accepted. So before Virginia met Jeffrey Epstein, she opened up to Ghislaine about the fact that she had been sexually abused by multiple people throughout her life. Virginia says that this was probably the time when they realised that she was a lot more broken than they first thought, making her a lot easier to control and manipulate. The way in which Virginia met Jeffrey Epstein was the same as many of the other survivors, with him on the massage table. She says that once she massaged his back, she was instructed to have sex with him, and Ghislaine joined in. So unlike some of the survivors, Virginia was totally trapped. Even when they weren't on the private island, with a string of sexual abuse encounters throughout her life, she says that she genuinely thought, this is life. This is how it's supposed to be, and this is what is always going to happen to me. So one of the abusers that Virginia named on her list was none other than the Duke of York, Prince Andrew. She says that she was trafficked to Britain in 2001, especially for Prince Andrew. She even has photographic evidence of the night that she first met him. When they left the party they met at, Ghislaine told 17-year-old Virginia that she now had to do for Prince Andrew what she always does for Jeffrey Epstein. This is mind-blowing. This teenager was stuck in a foreign country with people that basically had her held hostage. She had no free will and was surrounded by some of the most powerful people in the world. So she simply did as she was told. Virginia was told to make Prince Andrew happy, and the two were left alone in Ghislaine's home in Belgravia. She even described the counter in vivid detail, saying that it started in the bath but didn't last very long. The whole encounter and procedure was disgusting. He wasn't mean or anything, but he got up and says thanks and walked out of the room. And I just sat there on the bed, horrified and ashamed, and felt guilty and dirty. She says that when she met Ghislaine the next day, Ghislaine told her that she had done a very good job with Prince Andrew. Virginia talked about how hard it was for her to come to terms with what had just happened, saying, I just didn't expect it from our royalty. I didn't expect it from someone that so many people looked up to and admired. I couldn't comprehend how the highest level of government, powerful people, were allowing this to happen. Not only were they allowing it to happen, but they were actively participating in it. So in total, Virginia was stuck with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell for 2.5 years. Towards the end of this time, they asked her to bear a child for Jeffrey Epstein, but she was also presented at this time with a legal document waiving all rights to this future child. They says that they would give her an allowance in exchange. She still seemed to have no way out of this, so she agreed, but asked that they let her finish her education to become a masseuse, for which she had taken a trip to Thailand. While she was in Thailand, she would meet a man called Robert, the man that was the first man to tell her that none of this was okay. The two got married less than a week later and moved to Australia, finally freeing Virginia from the shackles of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. Virginia was one of the few to be able to get a normal and a happy life after dealing with the abuse at the hands of Epstein and Ghislaine. Another survivor, a woman called Sarah Ransom, talked about how everything worked. She said Ghislaine controlled the girls and she was like a madam. She was like the nuts and bolts of the sex trafficking operation. If anyone tried to leave or say anything, Ghislaine would turn from a trustworthy, motherly figure to one that would threaten to kill them and their families. It was like this ring of influential child abusers would never end. Even if the authorities had gotten involved, they had a system. If it wasn't the co-conspirators that were bringing in the girls, it was the ones that were trapped in the cycle themselves. They'd tell them that they'd either let them go or they would go easy on them if they brought in more girls. Even when Virginia was allowed to go to Thailand, she was supposed to bring back a recruit. Courtney Wild says that she probably brought in 50 to 70 girls just on her own. There is no specific number as to how many girls Jeffrey Epstein abused over the years, but it is believed to be in the thousands. One of the most wicked parts about this whole thing is that Jeffrey Epstein had the places where the girls lived wired. There was audio and video evidence of almost everything and everyone that was involved. He used some of the girls to collect blackmail material and favours from other influential people. It was a vicious circle of absolute abuse. In 2005, Jeffrey Epstein was first arrested after a girl told about the abuse to her parents. Even though the authorities had enough evidence to put him behind bars for 45 years, all he got was a slap on the wrist. He got a plea deal and only agreed to the charges of procuring a child for prostitution. And using his influence, he got not only an extremely lax 18-month sentence where he was allowed outside to work every day for the entire week and had a whole wing of the prison to himself, he even negotiated a secret immunity deal in Florida that protected not just him but his co-conspirators from any other charges. When he went to prison, Ghislaine totally disappeared. She was never seen with Jeffrey Epstein again. No one knew of her whereabouts, so she couldn't be subpoenaed. Epstein made it out in a mere 13 months, but on July 6, 2019, he was arrested again for sex trafficking of minors in Florida and New York. This time even he knew the jig was up and that he wasn't going to get away with it. So Epstein committed suicide in his jail cell on August 10, 2019, a little over a month after his arrest. So this shifted the focus from him to his co-conspirators. The main one being Ghislaine Maxwell, who went into hiding for nearly a year. She was found on $1 million hideaway mansion in New Hampshire and arrested at that location on July 2nd, 2020. She is now being charged for luring underage girls for Epstein to sexually abuse. She has been named in several lawsuits by survivors directly, as well as being involved in the sexual abuse herself. Her trial is set to start in July of 2021, and the survivors are hoping that the ruling goes in their favour, and that Ghislaine is put away for the rest of her life. The craziest part about all of this isn't the fact that Epstein and Maxwell were child abusers. It's the fact that even after authorities had all the evidence and multiple survivors had come forward, it took decades to put Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell behind bars. Jeffrey's influence ran further than his money, and it destroyed the lives of countless young children and women. Had the authorities done something sooner, thousands of girls could have been saved from sexual abuse. For now, Ghislaine Maxwell's future looks bleak and uncertain, but it doesn't seem like the truth of her crimes will ever fully come to light. Maybe she'll end up mysteriously dead in her jail cell, just like Jeffrey Epstein. Well guys, that wraps up our glimpse into the dark truth behind Ghislaine Maxwell. What do you think will happen at her trial? Let me know in the comment section below, and make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to True Crime with Craig for more dark, twisted stories like this one. I will see you all next week for another video. Take care. Bye.